As Chimezie Metu, a great spokesman for the team, said after the win on Monday, Mike Brown has this team thinking championship. Second place in the West, the best offense, one of the best in history.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? Is championship talk crazy?
Man, I mean, I don't know if it's crazy. It's crazy in the sense that I don't see the Kings as like a top team. I guess I mean the top teams right now are all in the East. Like I don't see him as a Boston Celtics. I don't see him as a Milwaukee Bucks. I don't even really see him as a Phoenix Suns, even though the Suns are a couple seeds below the Kings right now. But I mean, they can really start, like I said, a month left in the season and really start to dial in, especially on the defensive end. I think it's all just the question remains is on that defensive end, right? Like they have the offense. In playoffs, it's a little different than regular season. And can they get stops down the stretch, like really good stops down the stretch? In the postseason, I just that's just the biggest question mark. But I mean, they can score with the best of them. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's crazy? I'm kind of right there. I'm like, I kind of want to believe, but I still think they have a little ways to go before I even see them coming out of the West
Mm-hmm.
to win that Western Conference.
Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't call it crazy. Like it would be crazy at the beginning of the season to be saying something like that. But they're second place in the Western Conference. We've laid out all the reasons why they're a legitimately good team, but I wouldn't be going around betting my money that this team can win the Western Conference Finals or go that far. And I think you pinpointed it. It all comes down to the defense. And I have a positive viewpoint on that and a negative viewpoint on it, like optimistic and pessimistic. And starting with the optimistic stuff, you've seen it all year. The team can sometimes just kick it into another gear on a moment's notice. And in big moments in games, typically late in the game, or stepping up after a poor defensive performance, they struggled to defend Minnesota from the 3-point line because they struggled on their pick and roll defense and their defensive activity with high hands and sticking with guys and being disruptive against Minnesota. Bounced back, had a good game against New Orleans. One of the better defensive games in recent memory. And they've had moments like that. If you remember correctly, at the beginning of January, they gave up 136 points to the Lakers the next game. And I think they gave up 72 paint points in that game. And then the next game against the Magic, they had a great defensive game. I think held the Magic to 44 or something like that, something in that range, paint points. So they have moments like that. They give the impression that the team can, to use the phrase again, tighten the screws when it's necessary to start kind of getting serious about that end of the floor. And on a personal level, we talked about it when the Kings traded for Kevin Huerter over the summer. And we were talking about is he a two-way player? And we're talking about, because obviously he's got it on the offense, but does he have it on the defense? He has some upside, but there's still some things missing. But one of the interesting things is that statistically speaking, defensive rating wise, and the Hawks backcourt struggled in defensive rating all year. But every time Kevin Huerter goes to the playoffs, that defensive rating whittles down. And I think in that series against Philadelphia, I think there might be a whole YouTube video about just Kevin Huerter's defensive highlights in that series. I might be making that up, but it was kind of a topic of discussion that Kevin Huerter in the playoffs, brought that defensive intensity. So can that happen on a team-wide level? Yeah, it's totally believable. With Mike Brown, with guys like Kevin Huerter, guys like De'Aaron Fox, I think it's possible. But then comes the negative viewpoint, and it's a glaring issue. It's even more glaring than the inconsistency on the defensive end. Where's the playoff experience? They've never done this before. And I don't think I need to elaborate much more than that. It takes a long time to be a winner. And Mike Brown talked about it, I think, after the loss to Minnesota. It's you have to understand that you have to bring that energy, that constant activity. What you saw against New Orleans, you have to bring that night in and night out. That's difficult. You saw them in the game prior. They were tired. They were worn out. It was the second of a back-to-back. And so it's not about just building that experience. It's about the habits, the construction of a second nature throughout that kind of experience building. So it's not crazy that the Kings are talking championship. They should be. That should be on the horizon in the next 3 seasons. I think, like, in terms of being a legitimate contender, they should definitely be talking about that. I don't think it's crazy that they'll be a legitimate contender in 3 years, is I guess what I'm saying. Maybe even less. But right now, that lack of experience does not necessarily foretell the best in terms of whether or not they'll be able to turn on the defensive consistency